right now, from coast to coast, across presidential battlegrounds. It's all coming down to this night and this choice in a history-making, rule-breaking, jaw-dropping campaign.
The American dream and our American democracy are under attack and on the line like never before.
And quite simply put, we will very quickly make America great again.
The people are choosing, the world is watching, and anything is possible until the last vote.
We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world into the Election Predictions official election center. My name is Ryan Guest, here with a prediction for how this historic 2024 presidential race will turn out. We're watching the final dash to vote across the nation. Right now, we're looking inside a polling station in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, one of the many critical battlegrounds on the 2024 electoral map that we're going to be keeping a close eye on as the night progresses. Former President Donald Trump was in the Philadelphia area earlier today. He is expected to return to his home in Mar-a-Lago within the next hour, where he will be watching the returns. Meanwhile, it is a cold, wet day in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, as you take a look here at a live look at the White House. Vice President Kamala Harris is not there right now. She was campaigning in Wisconsin earlier today. It's election night in America 2024, following a historically long and tumultuous election cycle. Incumbent President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump secured the Democratic and Republican Party nominations earlier than in any recent memory, setting up what would have been only the 7th presidential rematch in American history. However, after a disastrous June debate performance, Biden dropped out and endorsed his vice president, Kamala Harris. The race is further complicated by the unusually high support for third-party bids, most notably from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who at one point this cycle was polling higher than any non-major candidate since Ross Perot nearly 30 years ago. After all the twists, the turns, drama, and suspense, it all comes down to tonight. All 50 U.S. states and the District of Columbia will cast their votes to decide who will lead the country for the next 4 years. It's a heated fight for 270 electoral votes, the magic number needed to win the White House. We're counting down until the first round of poll closings here at the top of the hour. Sit back, try to relax, and we'll be back right after the break with the first results.
Across the nation, in red states and blue states and swing states, voters are delivering their verdict.
We will fight, we will lead, we will speak with truth.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
We've arrived at our first major poll closing of the night. The clock is just a few ticks away now from 7 p.m. here on the East Coast, where we will get our first results from the 2024 presidential race in these 6 states, with a total of 60 electoral votes at stake. We're anxiously awaiting the first returns, especially in the battleground of Georgia, where we'll be looking for the first early clues as to where the election may be headed tonight. All right, we have our first projections of the night. EP official now projects that former President Trump will win in Indiana. Donald Trump defeats Kamala Harris in Indiana, carrying the Hoosier State's 11 electoral votes, the first projection of the night. Trump is also projected to win in Kentucky, where he will pick up 8 more electoral votes, as expected. We can also project that Vice President Kamala Harris has won the state of Vermont. 3 electoral votes in Vermont will go to the Democrat. Harris wins in Vermont. It's too early to call in these states right now. Too early to call in Georgia, with 16 crucial electoral votes up for grabs. The first votes here in Georgia may serve as our first true indicator of tonight's outcome. Remember, in 2020, President Joe Biden pulled off a surprising victory in Georgia by just 0.2 percentage point. It was the closest state in that election. In Virginia, once a pivotal battleground state, it has now been a reliably Democratic state over the last decade and a half. But it's too close to call right now. Biden became the first Democratic presidential candidate to carry the Commonwealth's 13 electoral votes by a double-digit margin in 2020 since 1944. 13 electoral votes at stake in Virginia. Also in South Carolina, 9 electoral votes in South Carolina. It's just too early to call in this reliably Republican state, as our decision desk is waiting for the first votes to come in out of South Carolina. All right, let's take a look, though, at the Electoral College count now, the votes, and where it stands right now. Donald Trump has 19 right now. Harris has 3. Remember, you need 270 electoral votes, 270 to win the White House. We've got a long way to go tonight, of course, as you see the states shaded in a light gray still have their polls open. Voters are still in line and making their way to the polling booths across the rest of the country, including in Florida, where precincts have closed in most of the state outside of the most western counties in the Panhandle, where polling stations will remain open until 8 p.m. The first results out of the rest of the state are expected in just a few moments, but EP official will not be making a call in the Sunshine States until the very last people have had their say in this historic presidential contest. And we've got our first key race alert coming in right now. Donald Trump is the projected winner in the state of South Carolina. It was too early to call as polls closed, but our decision desk can now project that the state's 9 electoral votes will be added to the Republicans' tally. 9 electoral votes go to Trump from South Carolina, increasing his total to 28 on the night. You need 270 to be elected president. Kamala Harris's lone win in Vermont amounts to just 3 electoral votes thus far, as we remain far out from having any definitive answers about how the all-important Electoral College race will shape up. We're coming up on another critical round of poll closings in the Harris versus Trump presidential race. Just moments from now here at 7:30 p.m. on the East Coast. That's when the polls will close in the battlegrounds of North Carolina and Ohio, as well as West Virginia. Together, these states account for 38 of the 270 electoral votes needed to win the White House. All right, we have an EP official projection in West Virginia. Donald Trump is projected to carry the state and its 4 electoral votes. That is 1 less electoral vote than it awarded Trump in the 2020 election, as it did lose an electoral vote due to population shifts. West Virginia favored Trump by a larger combined margin than any other state between 2016 and 2020. It's too early to call, meanwhile, in North Carolina, 16 electoral votes at stake here. That is 1 more than in 2020 following reapportionment. North Carolina, a key battleground tonight. This is a must-win for the Trump campaign. Too early to call right now. As for the state of Ohio, another must-win for the former Republican president. Ohio, once a critical swing state, now firmly Republican-leaning, no GOP presidential candidate has been elected to the White House without winning Ohio. 17 electoral votes at stake tonight. It's too early to call right now. Let's take a look again at the Electoral College map, again where it stands right now. 4 electoral votes from West Virginia raised Trump's total to 32. Just 3 electoral votes have been awarded to Harris so far from Vermont. Virginia and Georgia remain too close to call, and they are now joined by Ohio and North Carolina. Let's get another key race alert right now. Precincts are about to close in 16 states and the District of Columbia, the biggest round of poll closings all night. A whopping 172 electoral votes are at stake right now, almost a third of the total number up for grabs here in the next hour, including the absolutely pivotal battleground of Pennsylvania. All right, we've got some EP official projections right now. Let's start in Illinois. EP official projects that Kamala Harris will carry the state of Illinois. The vice president will win its 19 electoral votes. In Massachusetts, 11 more electoral votes go to Harris here as the Democrat carries Massachusetts. Kamala Harris will win in Maryland with its 10 electoral votes, another deep blue state, going into the vice president's column. It's another win for Harris in Connecticut with 7 electoral votes. A win for Kamala Harris in Connecticut, no surprises in any of these states, and no surprise in Rhode Island either. 4 more electoral votes go to Harris from Rhode Island. The vice president will also carry the president's home state of Delaware, the state Joe Biden served in the United States Senate for almost 40 years. Delaware goes blue, as does the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., with its 3 electoral votes awarded via the 23rd Amendment all the way back in 1961. Democrats have won every presidential race here since then. Now for Donald Trump, we have some projections for Trump as well. The former president wins in Tennessee. EP official projects that Tennessee, with its 11 electoral votes, will go to Trump. And in the state of Missouri, 10 electoral votes in Missouri are added to the Trump camp's total. The Republican is also the projected winner in Alabama. 9 more electoral votes go to Trump from Alabama. The former president wins in Alabama. And in Oklahoma, 7 electoral votes from Oklahoma go to Trump, extending its streak of Republican presidential victories to 15. And finally, in Mississippi, another 6 electoral votes go to the Trump campaign as the former president carries Mississippi. We are unable to make projections right now in 5 states, starting in Florida. It's too close to call in Florida as the polls have now officially closed statewide in the Sunshine State. We've been tracking the returns here very closely over the last hour or so. Just keep in mind around half of voters in Florida do tend to vote early, and those are the numbers that we have been seeing so far. We do expect the Election Day vote to come in a whole lot faster now. That Election Day vote is expected to favor Trump more so than the early vote. We do seem to be getting closer and closer to awarding Florida's 30 electoral votes any moment now. As for the state of Pennsylvania, the Keystone State in name and practice, it's too early to call. Arguably the most important state on the electoral map tonight, both campaigns spent more money here than any other state, hoping to secure Pennsylvania's 19 electoral votes in their respective columns. And with Florida effectively being taken off the map for Democrats at this point, Pennsylvania is now considered to be the largest prize among the states still considered to be true battlegrounds tonight. Now, the state of New Jersey is also too early to call, a reliably Democratic state in the Northeast. No Republican has carried New Jersey since the 1980s, but our decision desk is awaiting the first votes to drop here tonight. Maine, meanwhile, the statewide race and its congressional districts are too early to call. 4 electoral votes are at stake in Maine, which does award 2 to the statewide winner and 1 to the candidate receiving the largest share of the vote in its 2 congressional districts. All 3 contests are too close to call right now in a state where third-party candidates have performed relatively strongly over the years. That is especially important to keep in mind, as if no candidate hits 50% tonight, Maine's statewide contest will be decided via ranked choice voting, in which case we may not be able to call this race for a couple of weeks, as the state will tabulate those second and third choice votes later this month. And finally, it's too early to call in New Hampshire. 4 electoral votes are at stake here. Like in Florida, we have already been tracking votes coming in from the state, as just a few polling locations remain open until 8 p.m. here. Let's take a look at the Electoral College count now and how all of these 8 o'clock projections are shaping the race to 270. Donald Trump now holds 75 electoral votes, continuing to lead Kamala Harris, who holds 60 electoral votes now. 9 states remain too close to call at the moment, with no projection yet in these 9 states shaded in yellow. More than half of the available electoral votes are in states where the polls have not yet closed, shaded in gray, including the key battleground states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona. All 3 will see their polls close statewide at the top of the hour, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Let's get a key race alert now in the states where we do have votes in right now. EP projects that Kamala Harris has won the state of New Jersey. 14 electoral votes, as expected, coming into the night, are added to the vice president's tally. The state of New Jersey goes to the Democrats here, raising Harris's total up to 74 electoral votes. She does continue to trail Trump, although by just 1 vote now in the race to the White House. 270 electoral votes, that's the magic number. It's official now. EP can now project that Donald Trump has won the state of Florida. The former president will carry 30 electoral votes in Florida, providing a significant boost to his electoral count. There was no path to 270 without the Sunshine State. A loss here would have made it impossible for Trump to secure 270 electoral votes. Florida had been decided by less than 6 points in each of the last 8 election cycles, marking it as the quintessential battleground during that period. But it has now trended hard to the right over the last few cycles, and Trump appears likely to carry Florida by the largest margin for a Republican in decades, as the final projection here has the former president leading the sitting Vice President Harris by more than 700,000 votes. 50.6% to 43.8%. It's a near 7-point margin separating the two candidates right now. 6.8%, that's exactly twice as large as Trump's winning margin in 2020. So 30 electoral votes, again in Florida, will be added to Trump's growing tally, as the former president has extended his early lead to 105 electoral votes now to Vice President Harris's 74. We're keeping a close eye on the states that are still too close to call, most notably Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania at this hour. It's 8:30 on the East Coast, and the polls are closing in the state of Arkansas, and we've got an EPO projection coming in right now. Former President Donald Trump is the projected winner in Arkansas. He will carry its 6 electoral votes. Arkansas last voted Democrat for Governor Bill Clinton in his home state in 1996. With 6 more electoral votes now added to his tally from Arkansas, Donald Trump's total increases to 111 in the race to 270. Harris trails behind with 74 electoral votes to her name. We've got a key race alert coming in right now. EP official projects that former President Donald Trump will win the state of Ohio. Ohio will go in the Trump column as 17 more electoral votes are added to the Republicans' count. It's a hugely valuable state for the GOP, not so much for Democrats. Since 1896, the party that won Ohio won the White House in all but 3 election cycles, one of those being 2020. Ohio is simply no longer poised to play such a decisive role in presidential elections, as the state has lurched hard to the right since President Obama last won it for Democrats in 2012. It did vote for Trump by 8 points in 2016 and in 2020, and appears on pace to back Trump by an even greater margin here in 2024, as the final projection shows the former president leading by 557,000 votes, 52.5% to 42.4%. That is a 10.1 points advantage for Trump. As was the case in 2020, the early vote came in favor of Harris, but it was ultimately nothing more than a waiting game until Trump pulled ahead as the election day vote trickled in. Again, it's a 10-point margin of victory for Trump here, a 2-point improvement upon his 2020 margin in Ohio, 52.5% to 42.4%. Let's take another look at the electoral map now. Trump has extended his lead up to 128 electoral votes on the night over Harris's 74. Remember, 270 electoral votes are needed to win the White House. In Trump's case, that would make him just the second U.S. president to serve a non-consecutive term in the Oval Office. Voting is about to end in 14 states as the second biggest wave of results are coming up here at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. 156 electoral votes are up for grabs, and we're watching multiple key battleground states from Arizona in the Southwest to Michigan and Wisconsin in the Midwest. We got a projection to make right now. EP projects that Kamala Harris will win the state of New York. Harris beats out Trump in the former president's former home state, carrying New York's 28 electoral votes. No surprise here, the Empire State has not backed a Republican since 1984. We have a couple of calls as well to make in favor of Trump as EP projects the former president wins in Kansas. Trump will carry 6 electoral votes from the Sunflower State. The Republican will also win the state of Louisiana, 8 electoral votes here. EP projects that Louisiana goes to Trump. Trump is also projected to win in Nebraska, where he will carry 4 out of 5 electoral votes. As EP projects, the former president wins the statewide contest and Nebraska's 1st and 3rd districts. The 2nd district is too close to call. In Nebraska, it voted for Biden by 7% in 2020 and could play a key role tonight. More on that to come. We can also project in North Dakota, Trump will carry its 3 electoral votes. North Dakota goes to Trump, as does neighboring South Dakota. Another 3 electoral votes in South Dakota go to the former president. And finally, Trump will get another 3 electoral votes as well in Wyoming. Donald Trump is the projected winner in the state of Wyoming. We cannot make a projection at this hour in Texas, as polls have now closed statewide in the Lone Star State. 40 electoral votes up for grabs. Trump's 5.5-point win in 2020 was the narrowest victory for a Republican in nearly 20 years. In Michigan, 15 electoral votes in Michigan. It's too early to call right now in this critical battleground. It's a state the Harris campaign has labeled a must-win tonight. No Democrat has been elected president without winning Michigan since Jimmy Carter in 1976. It's also too early to call in Arizona, the second closest state in the 2020 election. President Biden just became the second Democrat to win Arizona since 1952 by a margin of just 0.3% 4 years ago. As always, in Arizona, we expect to see a large first drop of votes come in from Maricopa County, encompassing the Phoenix metro region, sometime after 10 p.m., as the state does place an embargo on any vote drops until then. It's also too early to call in Minnesota, another must-hold for the vice president. 10 electoral votes in Minnesota. It has voted Democratic in 12 straight presidential elections. That is the longest active streak still in effect today. Meanwhile, its neighbor to the east, Wisconsin, is also too close to call. Another 10 electoral votes at stake here in Wisconsin, an essential battleground tonight after Biden flipped it back into the Democratic column by less than a point in 2020, after Trump had carried it by less than a point in 2016. It's the only state that was decided by less than a point in both elections. Colorado is also too early to call. Another 10 electoral votes at stake here. Colorado has swung harder to the left than any other state in the country over the last 10 years. Harris is certainly expected to win here tonight. Iowa is also too close to call as polls close in the Hawkeye State. 6 electoral votes in Iowa. It was once a key battleground throughout the Obama era, but has now trended rapidly in favor of Republicans in recent years, handing Donald Trump victories in 2016 and 2020 by 9 and 8 points respectively. Finally, the state of New Mexico is also too early to call. 5 electoral votes in New Mexico. It voted for Biden by 11 in 2020 and has now backed Democrats in 7 of the last 8 election cycles. All right, let's take a look at the updated electoral map now. The Republican Donald Trump maintains his lead with 155 electoral votes to his name over Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris's 102. Remember, just a simple majority, 270 electoral votes, are needed to win the presidency out of the 538 up for grabs across the country. Voters are still making their way to the ballot boxes in just 9 states in the western United States now, one of which being the deep blue home state of Kamala Harris, California, with a colossal 54 electoral votes left to award. 14 states remain still too close to call, and we're tracking the trends as the results come in. And on that note, we have a key race alert coming in right now. We've got a projection to make now. In Colorado, Kamala Harris will carry Colorado and its 10 electoral votes. An expected result here after President Biden won it by 13.5 points in 2020. The projected final result here has the vice president up 11 points here over Trump, 51.5% to 40.4%. It's a 360,000 vote lead as you take a look here at the county map, 11 points separating Harris and Trump. Here in Colorado, 10 electoral votes are added to the vice president's growing tally, raising her to 112 on the night. She still trails Trump at 155. EP official projects that Kamala Harris is the winner in Virginia. Virginia goes for Harris. Harris beats Trump in the Commonwealth of Virginia, 13 electoral votes. They go to the vice president. The Trump campaign had spent relatively little time in the state compared to previous, more competitive elections in Virginia. Joe Biden's 10-point victory in 2020 was the largest for a candidate of either party here since 1988, and polling averages headed into tonight had shown Harris with a comfortable advantage. Take a look here at the projected final total. Harris holds 49.8%. That's her share of the vote to Trump's 43.3%. It's a 5.5-point margin right now, with 227,000 votes separating the two candidates, and the Commonwealth is again 13 electoral votes go to Harris in Virginia. EP official can also project the race in Iowa now. EP projects that former President Donald Trump will win the state of Iowa. He beats Harris in Iowa, 6 electoral votes. Trump wins in Iowa. You can take another look here at the projected final results here. Trump leads by 171,000 votes, 52.2% to 41.7%. That is a double-digit margin of 10.5%. Here, similar to the lead that the Republican held in Ohio, as Ohio and Iowa continue to vote very closely in tandem with one another. So let's see where the Electoral College map stands right now. With that win in Iowa, Donald Trump has 161 electoral votes now, while Kamala Harris raises her electoral count to 125 with a victory in Colorado. The all-important race to 270, you're elected president if you reach that number. Donald Trump has 161, Kamala Harris 125. All right, we have another projection right now in New Hampshire. EP official projects that Kamala Harris will win the state of New Hampshire, will win its 4 electoral votes. Harris wins in New Hampshire, considered the only true battleground in the Northeast. Over the last several decades or so, the Granite State has been decided by a single-digit margin in 8 consecutive elections now. And that continues tonight, as you see here. Democrats have now won New Hampshire for a 6th consecutive election, with the final projected results in New Hampshire showing Harris leading by almost 5 points, 4.9%. She does appear to have won New Hampshire by a considerably narrower margin than Biden's 7-point win 4 years ago, though a win is a win, as she leads by 40,000 votes, 48.9% to 44%, and so here is where the Electoral College map stands right now following that projection. Harris's count increases to 129, though she still trails Trump's 161 to 129. We'll be back with the next round of poll closings at the top of the hour. We're just moments away now from another round of poll closings. Voting is about to end in 4 states here at the top of the hour, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, including the key battleground of Nevada. A total of 21 electoral votes are on the line right now. EP official projects that Donald Trump will carry the state of Montana. 4 electoral votes, it gained 1 via reapportionment after the census. EP projects the former president wins in Montana. Trump is also projected to win in Utah, 6 electoral votes. The state of Utah goes to the Republican here, so 2 expected results there for the former president. Nevada is the state and race we're looking at most closely here. 6 electoral votes are at stake, and it's too close to call in this critical battleground. The Democrats carried by margins of less than 3 percentage points in both 2016 and 2020. Now, we don't expect to see the first votes come in out of Nevada for a while, so sit tight on that. Now, with those projections in Montana and Utah, former President Donald Trump has marginally increased his electoral vote count. He now leads Harris with 171 electoral votes to the vice president's 129. The race to 270 is shaping up just as we had forecasted heading into tonight, with it coming down to just narrow margins in the upper Rust Belt trio of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, as well as the Sun Belt trio of Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia. Let's get a key race alert in some of those states right here. EP official can project that Kamala Harris will win in New Mexico. Vice President Kamala Harris will carry the state and its 5 electoral votes, 50.3% to 42%. It's an 8.3% margin here. Another projected result, about 2 to 3 points narrower than the margin that Biden won with 4 years ago. Nevertheless, Harris is the winner in New Mexico, as it does remain in the Democratic column for a 5th consecutive cycle. So another projection has been made there as we take another look at the Electoral College map. Harris now holds 134 electoral votes. Trump has 171. Precincts remain open in just 6 jurisdictions at this point in the night, while we're getting closer and closer to making some calls in a whole bunch of states with no projection up to this point. That's right, EP projects that Donald Trump will carry the state of North Carolina, a big battleground state, the first true battleground that we're calling for either Trump or Harris tonight. It's another important win for the Republican as he will win the Tar Heel state. EP projects and adds 16 electoral votes to his tally. This was an absolute must-win for the Trump campaign's path to 270, and you can see here with the final projected results, he leads Vice President Kamala Harris by 3 points. It's a raw vote margin of about 165,000 votes right now. North Carolina goes red at the presidential level for the 4th straight election. Republican margins had previously ranged from around 1.5 to 2.5 points over the last 3 elections held in the states, but with more than 5 million votes counted in this perennially competitive, yet Republican-leaning state, Trump continues to beat expectations. and 16 electoral votes will be added to the former president's growing tally, 48.7% to 45.7%, again, a 3-point margin separating the two here. Now, as we discussed at the start of the broadcast, the two candidates' paths to 270 were largely independent of one another outside of these 6 key battlegrounds, and North Carolina and New Mexico were both prime examples of that distinction. For the vice president, the rest of her unique path is as simple as it has been. As soon as polls close on the West Coast, we anticipate calling several Democratic strongholds in favor of Harris. She will then need to hold her current leads in Minnesota and New Hampshire, while on the other side, Trump must win Idaho and Alaska, as well as hold his advantage in Texas. Those are the minimums the candidates must hit before their paths then intersect in the remaining battlegrounds left without a projection. Again, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania in the Rust Belt, and then Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada across the Sun Belt. Texas, 40 electoral votes. We have another projection. It will go to Donald Trump. He is the projected winner in Texas. The Lone Star states, along with Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and Iowa, represented Trump's Republican wall coming into this election. He needed to win all of them. Any crack would have likely proven fatal for his path to 270, and he's gotten the job done in each of them. Take a look here at the results, as once again, in spite of Democratic turnout bombs in the large metro regions, Republicans continue to make inroads with Hispanic voters in the Rio Grande Valley. In our projected final tally, Trump holds 50.1% of the vote to Vice President Harris's 43.7%. More than 10 million votes have been counted here in Texas, the second largest state in the nation, and it's a margin of 6.4% separating the two candidates right now. It's a margin that is similar to the lead that he holds in Florida and almost a full point larger than his 2020 margin. Now, taking an updated look at the race to 270, Texas, of course, with 40 electoral votes, provides a major bump to Trump's electoral vote count as he eclipses 200 and inches closer and closer to 270 with 227 votes to his name up to this point. Vice President Harris trails with 134. Polls are about to close in 4 states out west, including key Democratic strongholds down the Pacific Coast in Washington, Oregon, and California. There are 78 electoral votes at stake coming up here at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific time. Let's take a look. The biggest prize of them all, California, with its 54 electoral votes, will go to Vice President Kamala Harris. The most populous state in the country, California lost an electoral vote for the first time in its history, but still provides the Democrat with a major boost to her electoral count from her home state. And moving up the coastline to Washington, we can call the state for the vice president. 12 more electoral votes will be added to Harris's column here as well. From the state of Washington, Harris wins here in Washington state. The vice president is also the projected winner in Oregon, where she will carry 8 electoral votes, Oregon goes to Harris, as Democrats have kept the Pacific Coast blue wall intact for the 8th consecutive presidential race. And one projection for Donald Trump right now as well, EP official projects that Donald Trump will win in the state of Idaho. That's 4 electoral votes. Let's take an updated look at the Electoral College count now, where it stands right now after all of those projections. Trump maintains his lead, but it has narrowed significantly here, 231 to 208. 270 are needed to win. Polling stations have now closed everywhere except for Hawaii and Alaska, coming up here at midnight Eastern. We do anticipate making a number of major projections in the next hour or two from many of these key races still too close to call. Let's take a look at some of them right now. EP official can finally make a projection in Maine. The statewide race remains too close to call, as we still do not know whether Harris will reach 50% and avoid a ranked choice tabulation. We can, however, project that Harris carries the Democratic-friendly 1st Congressional District, covering the relatively urban southern portion of the state. 1 electoral vote goes to Harris from this district. Meanwhile, we can project that Donald Trump has won Maine's more competitive 2nd Congressional District, the largest district west of the Mississippi. Trump won it in both 2016 and 2020. It covers the extremely rural northern half of the state. 1 more electoral vote will be added to the former president's count on the night. This is the 3rd consecutive election in which Maine has split its electoral vote delegation between the candidates, awarding at least 2 to the Democrats and 1 to the Republicans. This is a big one. EP official projects that Donald Trump is the winner in Georgia. 16 more absolutely pivotal electoral votes go into the former president's column from this critical southern battleground. Trump had led all night while Harris slowly chipped away at his lead as heavily Democratic vote dumps from the Atlanta metro region came trickling in. But our decision desk is sure Trump's lead will hold now. This was a state heavily contested by both campaigns, but especially Trump, who spent a lot of time and resources in an effort to flip the peach state back into the Republican column, seeing it as a must-win in his path to a 270 electoral vote coalition. Back in 2020, Joe Biden rode a wave of record turnout among black voters in the Atlanta metro area to victory in 2020. And while Harris did receive that boost yet again here in 2024, Trump has managed to win back enough disaffected Republicans in rural Georgia to make up for what was already a very, very narrow deficit 4 years ago. He holds 48.1% of the vote to Harris's 46.2%, as Kamala continues to underperform Biden's margins by about 2 to 3 points in key races across the country. Now looking at the Electoral College count, the former president increases his lead and inches closer to 270 electoral votes, with 248 now to the vice president's 209. Just 8 states remain too close to call, while precincts remain open in Alaska and Hawaii. And assuming that Alaska does back Trump and Hawaii to Harris, the scenarios for each candidate to reach 270 are now as follows. Trump's easiest path is with just a win in Pennsylvania, where he does lead right now. A win in Alaska and Pennsylvania would net him 22 electoral votes, exactly enough to reach 270. Meanwhile, Harris absolutely must hold Minnesota and most likely Michigan, where she does continue to inch closer in the vote tally right now, plus 2 more states to hit 270. It's that time. Our final poll closing of the night is upon us. It's midnight here on the East Coast, and the polls are closing statewide in Alaska and Hawaii, where we have a projection to make right now. And as expected, EP official projects that Vice President Kamala Harris is the winner of the presidential contest in the Aloha State. Hawaii and its 4 electoral votes go blue for the 10th consecutive election cycle. It is too early to call, meanwhile, in Alaska, where we don't anticipate getting a drop of votes for another hour or 2. Alaska has been a reliably Republican state since it was admitted into the Union in 1959, although Donald Trump's 10-point victory in 2020 was the lowest margin for a GOP candidate here since 1968. Hawaii raises Harris's electoral tally now to 213 electoral votes. She does continue to trail former President Trump in the all-important race to 270. It's 248 to 213. Let's get a key race alert in right here. All right, take a look at this. Kamala Harris has held the state of Minnesota. EP official projects the Democratic vice president will carry the state's 10 electoral votes. It had been trending Republican between the Obama and Trump eras. The former president came within 1.5 points of Hillary Clinton here in 2016. But President Biden managed to secure Minnesota by 7% in 2020, re-solidifying its status as a Democratic-leaning state. Take a look here at the final projected vote total. Harris leads Trump by more than 140,000 votes. It's a 4.5-point margin as Minnesota votes Democratic for the 13th consecutive presidential election, the longest such streak of any state still in effect today. Trump has clearly made a few inroads since 2020, flipping Winona County, among others, on the Wisconsin border, but Republican efforts have ultimately fallen short again in Minnesota. We can also make a projection in Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, one of the most reliably Republican states in the country. Nebraska, like Maine, has split awarding their electoral votes by congressional district since 1992. Barack Obama became the first Democrat to carry this urban, Omaha-based district in 2008, before it then returned to the Republican column in 2012 and 2016. Joe Biden flipped the district in 2020, winning by 6.5 points, and Harris is currently projected to win here by 4.3%. 17,500 votes separate Harris and Trump here as Democrats extract another electoral vote out of deep red Nebraska. And taking a look at the electoral map now, that one electoral vote could prove significant. Remember, the Nebraska state legislature tried to get rid of Nebraska's split electoral vote system back in April, aiming to help Trump in the race to 270. That's because if Kamala Harris holds the traditional blue states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania in the Upper Rust Belt, she would reach exactly 270 electoral votes. Trump, meanwhile, with victories across the Sun Belt in Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia, plus Alaska, would hit 268. In this scenario, if Nebraska's 2nd district had flipped to Trump, it would lead to a 269 to 269 tie, a constitutional crisis scenario that would likely result in a Trump presidency, as in the event of an electoral vote tie, the House of Representatives votes for the president. EP official can now project Donald Trump will win in Alaska. It's official now, 3 electoral votes will be added to the former president's tally here. Alaska votes for Trump, raising his electoral count up to 251, 19 shy of the magic number, 270, with 19 votes remaining too close to call in just Pennsylvania, along with several other states not yet projected to go to either candidate. And here we go. The first domino has fallen in favor of Democrats now, as EP official can project Kamala Harris has won the state of Michigan. 15 electoral votes go to Harris, a significant victory for her campaign, as a loss in Michigan could have been the final blow to the vice president's path to 270. Take a look here at the final projected results. Harris leads by just under 40,000 votes and a margin of 0.7%. Trump has cut well into the near 3-point margin that President Biden won with here in 2020, but it is not enough to flip the state of Michigan, which has consistently proven itself as the bluest of the core Rust Belt trio. It seems likely to vote to the left of both Wisconsin and Pennsylvania yet again, 47.4% to 46.7%, again a 0.7% margin here in Michigan. The question now becomes whether late arriving absentee ballots out of Philadelphia and Milwaukee favor Harris enough to push her over the top in Pennsylvania and in Wisconsin, where she trails former President Trump in both states right now. She'd likely need to win both of those to prevent another Trump term, as it is 251 to 239 right now in the race to 270. We are now getting word that we can make a projection in Wisconsin. Donald Trump is the winner in Wisconsin and will carry the state's 10 electoral votes. This is a massive victory for Trump and Republicans as they flip Wisconsin and win the state for the second time in 3 presidential elections. Trump leads by 1.5 points. It's a margin of about 38,500 votes here in the final projected tally, 47.6% to 46.4%, a margin of 1.2% separating Trump and Harris in terms of vote share right now. This is another critical victory for Trump as he appears yet again to have vastly outperformed the polls in Wisconsin, just as he did both in 2016 and 2020. The Badger State was perhaps the primary target for the Trump campaign, where demographic shifts have made Wisconsin more and more favorable for the Republican Party. This is the first crack in the Democrats' blue wall, and it might not be the last, as Democrats are running out of ballots in Pennsylvania to make up the former president's lead in the Keystone State. A win in Pennsylvania would be more than enough to secure 270 electoral votes for Trump and Republicans, as would a victory in Arizona, where favorable late-arriving absentee and Election Day vote drops from Maricopa County and elsewhere across the state have brought the former president within just a couple thousand votes in Arizona as well. 261 electoral votes to 239. The race to 270 is coming down to the wire. Here it is, after countless hours of tense vote counting in races from the presidential level all the way down to municipal results across the entire country, we have reached the moment where we can now project that former President Donald Trump has been elected the 47th President of the United States and will become just the second U.S. President to serve a non-consecutive term in the White House. Vice President Kamala Harris's efforts to coalesce the Democratic Party around her campaign after President Joe Biden's late withdrawal have come up short. We can make this call because EP official projects that Donald Trump will carry Pennsylvania, carrying the Keystone State's 19 electoral votes. It was the tipping point state in 2016, and what would have been the tipping point state had Trump won in 2020. Pennsylvania has proven itself decisive yet again, as in the final projected tally, Trump leads Harris by 0.8%, 47.8% to 47%. A margin of 54,000 votes separate the two candidates right now. It's a margin reminiscent of his 2016 victory over Hillary Clinton in Pennsylvania, as the electoral map starts to look more and more like that one from 8 years ago. Every precinct, every county, and every vote mattered in determining the outcome of this historic election, as Pennsylvania has delivered another finish for the history books. This projection lifts Trump above 270 electoral votes. He has 280 to Harris's 239. Trump has flipped the states of Georgia, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, with the races in Maine, Arizona, and Nevada too close to call. Donald Trump has been declared the winner in the state of Arizona. Here, with a late arriving drop from Maricopa County, EP official projects that the president-elect will carry this highly competitive Sunbelt state's 11 electoral votes, adding to his winning tally. He is projected to defeat Vice President Kamala Harris by just under 60,000 votes right now. It's a margin of 1.7% here, favoring Trump, 48.1% to 46.4%. President Joe Biden won Arizona by 10,500 votes and a margin of only 0.3% in 2020. But as you see here, Arizona has reversed back into the red column, voting Republican for the 17th time in the last 19 presidential races. With this win, President-elect Donald Trump adds 11 more electoral votes to his total, bringing him up to 291. Nevada and Alaska are the only states left, both races deemed too close to call right now as we await more votes in these notoriously slow-counting states. We can finally make a call in Nevada, where EP official projects the president-elect Donald Trump will carry Nevada's 6 electoral votes. On a night to forget for the Democrats, Republicans deal another blow in their expanding electoral college majority, with 46.7% to 46.4%. It's a remarkably narrow margin of just 0.3%, separating the two major party candidates here in Nevada. 6 electoral votes, this margin is significantly smaller than Democrats' 2.4-point victories in the Silver State both in 2016 and 2020. Nevertheless, Trump maintains a 4,000-vote edge and finally flips Nevada for the Republicans after they flipped the governor's office in 2022 and has trended right over the last couple presidential cycles as well. So 6 electoral votes out of Nevada raise Trump up to 297 electoral votes now, leading Harris with 239. We are still awaiting the ranked choice tabulation out of Maine to make a final call in this historic presidential contest. Alrighty, EP projects that Kamala Harris has won Maine, securing the 2 electoral votes awarded to the statewide winner, following ranked choice tabulation that eliminated the non-major party candidates and distributed their second choice votes around until only 2 candidates remained, and one of those hit 50%. Here you see those results. 52.8% to Harris, 47.2% to Trump. A margin of almost 45,000 votes separates the 2 candidates here, as Harris carries 3 of 4 electoral votes in Maine. And so taking a look at the final 2024 electoral college map projection, Trump has secured the presidency in this scenario with 297 electoral votes, ahead of Harris's 241. That does it for this 2024 election night prediction. I really hope you guys enjoyed, as I have put weeks worth of effort into it. Feel free to disagree or leave any comments, questions, or concerns down below. I appreciate the feedback regardless of whether it is positive or negative. Shout out to my channel members on screen here. Thank you so much for your support. If you would like to become a member, go ahead and click the join button below this video to receive exclusive perks. Make sure also to subscribe to my channel down below as well, and please leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. You can check out more content from my channel here, and as always, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.